Hey guys, it's me. I wanted to try something different today and speak my truth instead of writing an essay about it. So as always, I'm going to trigger warning this because we are talking about leaving a cult. We are talking about hunting. Specifically, Jehovah's Witnesses hunting other Jehovah's Witnesses. I also want to call this one why I am still vividly pissed off at my dead mother. Now I know many of us have feelings about talking badly of the dead, but let me be straight and say I do not share those feelings. If you don't want to be spoken badly about in death, don't be an ass in life. It's simple. Anyway, I digress. Something I don't talk about often is the day that I was caught and subsequently disfellowshipped from the cult. We'll start this story about a month prior or so to when it all went down, when my mother and my sister caught me playing chess with my worldly boyfriend at an outdoor coffee shop. Both of them, my mother and my sister, tried to get me to leave right then and there and come to Mom's house. Really, they were insisting. I flat out told them no. It would be rude of me to up and leave mid-game, and I will be up for supper like we planned, was my response. They left defeated, and I'm honestly unsure how that dinner went that night. I have no memory of that evening, but it must have been traumatic enough for me to block it out. And I think it's important to note that I think it was this day that my mother decided to recruit her hunter. What are hunters, you ask? Witnesses, usually in good or great standing with the cult, who literally hunt sinning Jehovah's Witnesses to catch and tattle on them. Really spying on the one in question. My mother's hunter was a woman named Penny. A prim and proper, i.e. rude and stuck-up, piggy-faced, rich elder's wife who wore designer clothes, had Karen hair, and an expensive car to pioneer in. I'm not sure if Mom had others out looking, but I would not doubt it. She did have a very dedicated group of friends at this point. On that mind-boggling day, the events that played out can only be described as a cultier version of the movie The Fugitive. Meeting and having time with my boyfriend at work was a thing I did often. He worked a 10-minute walk from my house, so on nice days, I would walk there and walk back. Yes, I was sinning in the eyes of the church, but I was doing nothing wrong as a 23-year-old adult woman. I was simply meeting my boyfriend for lunch. Everything was going great, too, until one day while I was walking, I noticed a shiny black car going up and down the road I was on. I didn't at this time know who the driver was because the sun was reflecting off the windows. I did, however, get fucking triggered because at one point in time when I was 16, I gained a stalker, which I'm pretty sure ended up being my brother, but that's another story for another day. So I picked up speed, and when I reached the corner of that sidewalk, I quickly scanned the area, didn't see the car, and took off running. I ran around and behind my boyfriend's work building into the employee parking lot and dove as quickly as I could into the back seat of his car. Mind you, this was no small feat because he had a two-door car where you had to unlock and push the front seat forward before you could get in the back. Panting, with heart pounding in my ears, I lay down in the back seat, shut my eyes, and clenched all my muscles, intending on remaining in that fetal position until my boyfriend came out for lunch, until I heard it. Between my frantic breaths and my heart pounding, I heard a crunching noise. the very distinct sound of car tires creeping over gravel. She had indeed seen which direction I ran and had followed me into an employee parking lot. She was going so slow that I just knew she was looking for me and not just turning around. But something snapped in me that moment. As I lay huddled in the back seat, realizing that I was indeed being hunted. I was a fox. Penny, the hound. And unfortunately, my mother was the hunt master. My own fucking mother. I remember when the thought solidified in my mind. That instant, my body became calm. My breath and my heart stilled long enough for me to think to myself, you're gonna get caught eventually. End it now. Look her in the eye. Look her in her piggy face. So I slid my hand to the top of the back seat and I sat up like a bolt and locked angry eyes with her. And then time stood still. When I popped up, she was leaned over her steering wheel, scanning the woods with squinted eyes. In that short amount of time, her face went through so many emotions. First, surprise. Second, acknowledgement and realization. Then, fear. As quickly as her face screwed up, it went blank, and she stepped on the gas, throwing gravel in her wake. Even though the whole encounter took less than 30 seconds, it felt like years. Even though she was alone in her car, I knew I was done for. My run as a Jehovah's Witness was coming to a close, fast and swift like a storm. It was 2 days later that I received a phone call from an elder about my judicial committee meeting. I cannot explain to you how much of a betrayal this was. This wasn't the first time that I had been hunted by Jehovah's Witnesses. It happened in another state I lived in too. That hunting party, however, was a full hunting party of at least 6 or 7 people, most of which were people who were in my friend group. The hunt master for that was my ex-boyfriend Titus. Someone, mind you, who sexually assaulted me and multiple other younger women in that congregation. But to look up and see one of my mother's friends behind the wheel was a different kind of betrayal. My own mother wanted me hunted. My own mother wanted me caught so she could tattle on me. My own mother was okay with knowing she would have to shun me. She was okay figuratively killing her own daughter. To forgive her at this point would be moot. She's dead, and we will never have the opportunity to reconnect without the cult dictating how we act towards each other. Even if she were alive, she wouldn't talk to me. In the 10 years she was alive and I was shunned, we spoke 3 times. They were all medical emergencies. She RSVP'd to my wedding and wrote on the card, "You know we can't come, but we love you." My mother was like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. As long as you were doing what you were told by the church, she loved and cared for you like her own. Her nickname in this congregation was Mama Sue because she played mother to others so well. Just wish she would have given me, her real fucking daughter, a time of day when I was struggling. But don't worry, she had plenty of fill-in daughters after I left, one of which was my ex-roommate. And another girl was somebody who stood in the waiting room the night my mother died like I was a ghost and that I had no right to tell her she could not go see my mother's body before my brother came. My brother, who is her real family. She pouted while being comforted by the other Jehovah's Witnesses, who were, by the way, as far on the opposite side of the waiting room as they could get from me because I was disfellowshipped. You know, I was there when she died. I watched them pull her tubes and monitors. I felt her heart stop. I had said my goodbyes, and I was just guarding her body until my brother was there. But Mom changed into a different person when you began to disobey the church. To save her own self, she threw her daughter under the bus. I'll say it again. To save her own chances at forever in paradise, she outed her deeply struggling daughter to her religious authorities so she, my mother, could make it to paradise. Because by knowing I'm running around sinning without telling on me, she places herself on the same pedestal as me, a sinner against the one true vengeful God. Yes, this makes me fucking angry. Livid beyond comprehension. If she would have, for just a second, placed herself in my shoes, or hell, even asked how I was doing in the months leading up to this, things might have turned out differently. That didn't happen, though. We almost became strangers during the meeting, and I stopped being invited to her house. What happened was I was hunted, like an animal, by my own mother's doing. That level of betrayal will never be forgiven. I can't forgive her. I refuse to forgive the person who is responsible for the hunt, who recruited her circle to find me, to then out me as a sinner. That's the nut kicker in the story. Honestly, she didn't do it to help me. She did it to catch me. So her chance at paradise wasn't compromised. I was disfellowshipped 3 weeks later, but I didn't attend that meeting because I didn't want to hear it. You know, I didn't want to see all the people start looking around for me when my name was announced. I didn't want to be there to hear the gasps and cries that came out of people's mouths when they heard my name coming out of that platform. But I also didn't want to sit there and listen to everyone whisper and side-eye me for the rest of that meeting. That wasn't goddamn going to happen. I did go to 3 memorials after I was kicked out. No one spoke to me, but they love-bombed my husband. The 3rd year, I wrote a letter explaining to the elders the things that I did not tell them during our last meeting. Things like I was sexually assaulted nearly every day by 2 different men who were supposed to be my boyfriends, that I was forced to abort a fetus or disappear under mysterious circumstances. I waited until I was leaving the memorial at the end of the night to drop that letter in the hands of the only elder I had come to trust. And when I say trust, I use that word very lightly. I didn't even break stride. Just dropped the letter mid-step and exited the hall with my head high. In the letter, I said I didn't feel comfortable tainting the organization because I had an abortion. I had killed a life, and for that, I was martyring myself by not returning to the org. My fate was sealed to be destroyed at the end of the system of things by God. In a way, it was me releasing myself of the responsibility of being a disfellowship member of the cult. Up until this memorial, I was living physically out but mentally in the cult. Living life as I wanted, but carrying around all the guilt and all the shame that the organization had nailed into my brain every day. It wasn't until my mother had passed that I was able to even begin to start to let go of that guilt and shame. I've been working on it in therapy, and let me tell you, it's not easy. But what happened to me was unfair. It was wrong. It never should have happened, but it did. My mom doesn't have to carry that betrayal with her. I do.